What's up, YouTube? We are back with another video here. We are doing a Stratagems tier list video this time. This is for the Hive worlds. As you can see on screen, we are being absolutely destroyed on these planets, and a lot of people have been asking, what about this stratagem? What about that stratagem? What about this stratagem? So I wanted to make a comprehensive, all-encompassing tier list video for stratagems, just to kind of give people the right idea on what to bring, what not to bring. Keep in mind that I'm going to be talking about these stratagems as like an overview of Cave, Hive Lord, Dragon missions. There is a Helldivers companion app.com, and you can see what you're about to face before you go in. So you're not kind of going blind. It's not in UI in game. I really hope that they add it. You should know what you're about to face on the planet. It's not working at the moment, unfortunately. But if you haven't already, helldiverscompanion.com, and then you can look under the details for the map, or you can just look at the symbols to see what's actually active. Because when I'm going to talk about these stratagems, I'm going to be like, this is great versus this, but it sucks versus this. And I'm going to try and order them based on their overall effectiveness, not just how good it is versus that one thing. I'm going to assume that Rupture Strain is going to be on these missions that you're doing. So I will also be ordering it based on Rupture Strain. Cool? Let's get into it. Starting off with our Eagles, we have Eagle Airstrike. I don't think it's necessarily a bad pick, but I also don't think it's a great pick for caves in general. You can find those openings in the cave roofs that may feel like it's pretty okay to use, but Hive Lords mostly will just ignore this. It does decent damage to them if they come out and you've angled it correctly. It'll do okay damage, but it's nothing near as big as like something like Strafing Run, for instance, which I find is actually like an A+ stratagem, possibly touching an S tier. Depends on what you're using it for. Very good versus Hive Lords, pretty good versus dragons. You can definitely use it in the occasional like wide open long section in the caves, and then it does perform quite well outside in like the open dunes and stuff like that. So I really do like Strafing Run, and honestly I could even maybe see myself putting an S tier. We'll see if it lies there throughout the rest of this tier list. Cluster bombs, maybe B-. You're out in the dunes killing the occasional like bugs and patrols or like bug breaches, you know, just spam 5 back-to-back cluster bombs. It does do a good job, but it doesn't have nearly as much anti-tank potential, and just over time, like it's been getting power crept, so it's kind of falling down. 500 kg, surprisingly not an S tier. It's not that good against the Hive Lords, as you probably already know. Dragons are so high up above it that it's not really affecting them too often, I find. It's not like a bad thing, but I find like you're gonna have to throw it, and then you're gonna hope the dragon's hovering above it. And then using it in caves, I find so often that it just clips one of the top parts of the cave, and it's just like, well, it's wasted. So it's still not bad for just doing objectives outside, and it does do decent damage versus Hive Lords, so it's not wasted. I really like the Napalm Strike. I still think that a lot of people kind of sleep on how good this is now that it has the extra use, and just in general how good fire damage is right now. It may not be very good versus Hive Lords, and may not be very good versus dragons, but it does very well against ruptured enemies because the initial explosion will force rupture enemies out of the ground. But then on top of that, you will get really good burn duration on bug breaches, and I do end up using it on flag missions because typically the flag missions that are inside the caves have a decent amount of open skyline that you can get the occasional Napalm Strike to work pretty well. So I do actually highly recommend the Napalm Strike for that. 110mm rocket pods, they're okay. I'm gonna probably put them somewhere in like B+. They can target dragons, but it's a little iffy on whether or not the dragon will sit still long enough for it to work versus them. It can target Hive Lords, but it's not the best damage per call-in. You're probably much better off using the Strafing Run just because it goes up the entire length of the Hive Lord, whereas this will pick one spot, which is nice, but it's not doing as much damage as you might potentially want it to. It's not a bad stratagem, but it's not also a great one. It might be able to sneak into A- tier, but we'll see how it goes throughout the entire tier list. Smoke, I'm gonna put B-. Fairly good for like getting the Hive Lord to like not see you or pay attention to you. Protect the Gator for those missions, and in general, like Smoke has been kind of like creeping up in terms of usefulness. A lot of times just killing the enemy is just the better result, but especially for like something like the Gator missions, I can see it being a lot more useful. Orbital Precision, I'm gonna put this actually right next to 500 kg just because it is an orbital. It's gonna come from more of a top-down trajectory. It is more useful, I find, in the cave environments, keeping in mind it's not as good as 500 kg out in the open. Out in the open, the 500 kg is just stronger. Orbital Gas is just a fantastic pick for caves even still. If you can get the right trajectory and you can find those holes, it's great. Great CC, especially on the flag missions. It's not going to do great versus Hive Lords or dragons, but I think it does so well versus the breaches and just general cave combat when you can find those openings that I think it's worth a mention, at least an A+. You know, orbital smoke has been improved. It now has projectile damage tied to it. They recently buffed that, which is nice. And you can start killing objectives with it. So if you wanted to, you could throw this on like a Shrieker nest and it could maybe potentially kill a couple of them because it has more demo force and it has damage tied to it, similar to Gas Strike. But I'm not a huge fan of this smoke in general just because it throws it around rather than puts it in a nice orderly line with the Eagle smoke. EMS is another one that I think has been getting a little bit better. They've recently, once again, they've improved the projectile damage so it has demo force, which is cool, and they've improved the duration, which is nice. There's also some stagger force to it as well, so it will at least stagger like a Bile Titan, for instance, but you're not doing anything to like a dragon or a Hive Lord in that situation, so it's mostly just for like the occasional breach, and it's okay, but orbital gas is just way better in comparison. I would say like some of the biggest losers of this like tier list, unfortunately, is like, and usually they're quite high on my tier list, is like the 120mm barrage and the 380. I think both of them are okay. For caves, I just wouldn't throw them. Typically only like maybe a couple shells will actually land in those like narrow strips of the cave openings. When you're out and about, it's pretty good, but it's like, is this going to kill a dragon? The likelihood of it doing that is extremely low, and the likelihood of it actually hitting a Hive Lord consistently, extremely low. Once again, it's at least decent for taking out like bug nests that are outside. You'll sometimes get a mega nest that's outside, or you're going to get like an egg mission that's outside, or you're going to get a Shrieker nest that's outside, and these are okay, but they're just so useless inside the caves themselves because they're just not in a big open areas. It's very rare to get the big courtyard like area, so I just can't really recommend it too much. Orbital Napalm Barrage usually it just sits like right up there in S tier. This one's like straddling the line between A- and A+. I do think Eagle Napalm is the better one of the two, just because you can use it. I'm going to use it in this entrance for this part of the cave, and I'm going to use it for here, and you can use it continuously and just do an Eagle rearm for a short cooldown. Orbital Napalm, not so much. You need a big area for it to be effective. It's mostly just going to be used for outside, but even when you're going for a Hive Lord kill, having one person with an Orbital Napalm Barrage is actually really nice for a kill because it just keeps the enemies off of you. It's like an MMO boss fight where ad control is very important to allow you and your teammates to do more damage to the boss. So Orbital Napalm Barrage still is a fantastic choice if you're going for those Hive Lord kills. Walking Barrage, same kind of situation as like 380 and 120, but I feel like it's even harder to use on cave missions just because it spans such a longer distance. You can still do those like, hey, there's a Shrieker nest 200 meters away from me. Let me chuck this and it will slowly walk towards it. Maybe half the Shrieker nest might get destroyed. Maybe all of them will. That's kind of the RNG of Walking Barrage sometimes though. So don't really recommend. Gatling Barrage is okay. Another one of those okay ones where it's like not necessarily bad, not necessarily good. It does do decent damage to a Hive Lord. The damage potential is very high. If you know which ship is yours in the sky and you can place the Gatling Barrage on the far side of the Hive Lord, a good amount of projectiles will hit its lower body and potentially do some decent breaking of armor. Nice, not bad. Do I think strafing runs better? Yeah, it's more consistent. You can spam it more often, but if you can get a good Gatling Barrage off every time he surfaces, I do think there's potential there, and it might even be higher than A+. But the thing is that it's not particularly great in the cave side. I don't feel like it is nearly as good as like the other alternatives. And then on top of that, I find that you just have better bug breach potential killers when you're outside in the dunes. So, Airburst fits right next to cluster bombs for me. It's like give or take, you know, which one you prefer. It's a really easy stratagem code, but it's hard to make work other than outside in the dunes. It doesn't have nearly enough pen potential to deal with a Hive Lord. You're not going to be hurting a Dragon Lord with it. I guess it's potentially could like come down and explode right on top of a dragon, but like unlikely, extremely unlikely. Laser is an interesting one where I actually think it's not that bad for these missions, especially if you're tending to do them in the 20-minute range. You'll have enough laser usage that it'll actually be pretty good. And if you can somehow coax the Hive Lord to stay up out of the ground for a large amount of time, the laser will cook them. It does a large amount of damage over that time frame of, what is it, like 30 plus seconds? Just the problem is that if you don't time it well, the laser will just do nothing because it will go back into the ground and he'll slither away and the laser will just kind of sit there and do nothing. So it can be potentially very good because sometimes like you can get the Hive Lord to do like 6 attacks in a row and it would be great for that. And sometimes he just does 1 attack and then slithers away. I don't know how to force him out of the ground the entire time. Maybe you guys do. Let me know in the comments if there's some kind of strategy to keep him out of the ground that you've noticed the entire time, but I've never seen any like consistent way. I've like tried to stay very close to him. I've stayed in his range, so maybe he'd just try and spam attacks to me, but he never seems to do it. Orbital Rail Cannon Strike is a big winner of this patch. I think it's easily in the A+ tier because it absolutely dominates Dragon Roaches. Just wait for the Dragon Roach to do his swoop, and then he'll just start hovering in front of you, and he might do another spit. But if you throw it, it will just delete it. One shot. It's so nice. And then Dragon Dragon roaches typically show up every like 2 to 3 minutes. Use this orbital rail cannon stratagem. I highly recommend it. It's not quite S tier because it doesn't perform that well in the caves. It's okay if it can actually go off and actually hit like maybe a ball titan or something, which it can occasionally do, but the cooldown is so long. And I don't really recommend it versus Hive Lords. Once again, it's okay. It will hit its head. It will do some amount of damage, but the cooldown is so long that it's just not enough damage per minute, I guess you could say. The flag, S tier, obviously, because aura. Just kidding. It's D tier. Don't really recommend, but I feel like that's pretty obvious why. The machine gun MG43, I think is like solid A-. It's not like your best performing weapon, and you're not going to be bringing rupture enemies out of the ground, but the medium pen does feel nice for the caves, especially with the rupture enemies tending to have medium pen. You'll want to bring like something else, maybe for AT, or like a primary weapon to force the enemies up out of the ground, like explosive weapons, but I don't think it's a bad choice, and it does feel quite nice in a lot of situations versus rupture, which is cool. Stalwart, as much as I like the Stalwart, rupture does not make it shine very bright. If warriors had an easier like light pen to hit at the front, other than like going behind it or like shooting below or trying to hit its pincers, it would definitely be better. I don't think it's bad because you can stiffly get those like hunter pouncer variants, and like the Stalwart shreds on that variant, but you're not always gonna get that variant. Versus like dragons, you can just aim at a wing and just like nail it, and if your teammates can break a plate on the Hive Lord, you could potentially do some good damage per second versus that weak point. But I find the hardest part of the Hive Lord fight is breaking that armor plate on the stomach, not really the fact doing damage afterwards, because literally everything in the game does damage to that like weak point after you've broken that armor plate. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think the spear is a bad choice, but I would probably rather bring an MG43 or the heavy machine gun. I think the heavy machine gun does deserve to maybe be like the bottom end of A-, because it does have the extra pen, which is really nice versus the Dragon Roach. It can be definitely way more effective versus the Hive Lords just because of like the damage potential at that point. But you're probably going to feel like you want to bring like a supply backpack, honestly, because you're not really going to be doing that much versus the Hive Lords until it's broken. And then on top of that, like Dragon Roaches can be pretty elusive, so you're going to like want to boost the fire rate up big time, but you're not going to have much ammo in reserve. So supply backpack almost feels necessary at all times with heavy machine gun. That's not necessarily a bad thing because you're going to see later the supply backpack is really good. Really good. I think the flamethrower is somewhere in the A- as well. It's rough versus rupture enemies because once again, fire does not get rupture enemies up out of the ground, but I do think that the flamethrower is great for the choke points. If you can light the enemies on fire or just keep them at bay and like keep the flame going, like it's really nice to have. You're not really going to do anything versus Dragon Roach. It's going to be tough to get close enough to a Dragon Roach to flamethrow them. It's kind of like some flying enemies, like the gunships, for instance, where they will like back up if you get too close to them. So you kind of need your teammate to take aggro, and then you can flamethrow underneath them, if that makes sense. But like if it's mad at you, it's like really hard to flamethrow them and get close enough to do damage because he's like hovering just far enough away. Sterilizer is definitely a disappointing one for me. I was hoping it'd be better and like bring rupture enemies out of the ground. It does not. If it did, I think it would be like maybe even like A+ tier if it brought rupture enemies out of the ground. It's not a bad choice, but I think the flamethrower ends up being a little bit better just because with the sterilizer, you could just bring a gas guard dog and then you don't really need to bring the sterilizer anymore. And then you can bring a flamethrower instead, and flamethrower plus gas guard dog, fantastic combo if you haven't tried it already. Arc thrower, it's feeling okay. Rupture enemies, once again, kind of the bane of like the arc thrower at the moment. It feels good at times. Luckily, the tracking in the caves is not that bad for the arc thrower, but like you're not bringing the rupture enemies out of the ground. It's like really good for like flag missions in particular, just so you can like spam a hallway and just hopefully get a lot of them done. But like I wouldn't really recommend the arc thrower versus the Hive Lord. It can do some chip damage to a dragon, but like it's gonna take so many shots to really do anything. So I think it's like a solid like ad clear, and like you can stun some charges and stuff like that, but not really highly recommending it or anything like that. Good choice, but like nothing crazy. You're gonna want to bring something else in your loadout to deal with like anti-tank, like at least thermites and stuff. AMR I think is like somewhere like next to heavy machine gun. One tapping bird commanders, very nice. Being able to one tap ball spears, very nice, but it's very accuracy dependent. Obviously you're not really doing anything versus the Hive Lord until a plate gets destroyed, so not really doing anything there. Killing a dragon with it is acceptable. I would probably go for headshots versus them, but hitting those headshots is a little bit challenging with him spewing fire at you and him flapping up and down. It's not the easiest lineup. It's not like you're shooting a Hulk or a Factory Strider that's sitting nice and still and you just shoot the eye. Definitely more of a mobile target, so needing so much precision can be a bit of your downfall. I'm gonna put an A- because I do think people sleep on AMR for like casual ad clearing. So if you have a good hand and you're very good at like aiming, I do like using this versus like brood commander strains or like ball strains. It does feel nice. It can actually delete a charger's butt if you like fire fast enough at its butt, but I'd probably still bring thermites. And also pretty damn good versus ball titans It's around 1.5 mags to kill them. Highly recommend. So for the first one that I'm going to definitely talk a little more about is the spear gun. The spear gun is like easily A+. I'm just not sure if it's S tier. And the reason for that, you guys already know why it's so good. It has overpen, it has gas, it's tons of gas grenades, especially great for the caves and stuff like that. Decent ammo economy. It can blow up bug holes. Like, it's got so much going for it. The thing that it kind of struggles with is the occasional impaler. It's not going to really do anything versus them. It feels very useless. Dragons, you need 6 headshots or just tons of body shots. It does not feel good against the dragons. And then Hive Lords, you can shoot it at it, but it's like not really doing anything. You're kind of just tickling it. And Bile Titans, by the way, not the best Bile Titan killer. It's like 5 to 6 shots to the head. At least it staggers the Bile Titan, so at least has that. But I think it shines so brightly in the other parts of the cave missions that it might just deserve to be an S-. I'm going to stick it in A+ for now, but we'll see at the end of the tier list if we want to swap things around. Railgun, it's okay. I do think it's better than the AMR overall, but it has been definitely outclassed by the spear gun. The spear gun's utility is just better. The railgun is going to be the better weapon to use against Hive Lords and dragons, but it is hard to hit the head of a dragon, even with the really high projectile velocity of the railgun. And it does do some decent damage, especially after you break that armor plate. If you do some really hard charge shots, you can melt some things. A Hive Lord will feel a railgun shot to the stomach for sure. Technically, if you hit some mouth shots as well, it would actually do quite well there as well. It feels pretty good in the caves. Remember, for chargers, aim for the butt. It's on average 2 charged 70-80% shots to break the butt. Actually, a very consistent killer of them, especially if they're like gassed. Like, you could bring like the gas guard dog and like it helps you like get behind them and flank them, which is really cool. EATs shining quite brightly in my opinion. EATs feel really good for the caves, just being able to call them in very consistently in the openings. It's quite effective versus the dragons if you get a good shot on them. If not, 2 body shots. It's decent versus Hive Lords. It's not a bad option. If your entire team, let's say, everybody brings EATs, it doesn't have to be, and then you just like chuck them whenever you can, every 60 seconds, the dunes will be littered with EATs. And all you have to do is every once in a while, when a Hive Lord comes up next to you, EAT, right? And then go back to doing whatever you're doing. Grab some more EATs and you could just like spam them, because like there's a lot of delay between the Hive Lords attacks and stuff like that you can just amass tons of EATs around, and it could actually do some pretty decent damage over time. And just make sure you're picking one armor plate to shoot it at. The only reason I wouldn't put it any higher than like this A+, it's kind of like an A tier, is that you only get 1 rocket to carry around with. Whereas like a Quasar, you get way more. So Quasar is still an S tier pick. It's not that good versus Hive Lords, but it's consistent AT damage versus Hive Lords without needing to reload or resupply. Decent. Dragons, 1 taps them in the head if you can get the shot off there, or just body shot them 2 to 3 times. It's really nice for walking around the caves. It just is. You're going to see chargers, you're going to see impalers, you're going to see Bile Titans. You kind of like pre-charge it if you've ever done it. Like, you charge it up a bit, don't shoot it, but you let it cool off. Just standing in front of the Bile Titan spawner for the big nest and just wait for him to come out. 1 tap him in the head, he falls to the ground, big nest is destroyed. So it's really great for situations like that. EATs obviously can do it too, but you have limited ammo, which is great. The new Napalm EAT, definitely a big fun weapon. I want to put it like A+. I'm not going to put it quite in S tier. It's a little unwieldy to use at times because you kind of need a good angle, and it's a little inconsistent at times on how it explodes and where it goes. It's really nice for killing dragons. 2 shots to the chest area. Hopefully it blows up and all the projectiles hit the wings and the main body, but then sometimes you'll shoot them same spot and it'll do like half the amount of damage, so you'll need 3. Cooldown is definitely longer than the EATs, but I really like it for like the occasional bug breaches and like bringing it into the caves and just like on the flag missions, like taking out large groups of enemies and stuff like that. It's nice. It's really nice. Just careful about the team killing. It does have that air burst rocket launcher kind of vibe as far as team killing, but I do recommend checking it out. It is very fun. I would not bring it as my primary weapon though. I would probably bring it in conjunction with EATs and use them together. When I need ad clear, I bring the napalm out. When I need anti-tank, I bring the EATs out. Use it together. Commando, feeling a bit lackluster compared to the EATs. I do think it's sometimes better in the caves just because I can carry around 4 rockets rather than just 1, but the impactfulness of the EAT can definitely be felt a lot of times, and the longer cooldown of the commando can sometimes be a little bit of game changer for me. I'm sure there's some commando enjoyers out there that'll probably put it higher, maybe A+, but I think for me, it's like closer to A-. Spear is a winner, mostly due to dragons. I'm gonna put it up in A+, mostly for dragons and Hive Lords. It's not a bad Hive Lord weapon. It's not as ammo efficient as the recoil is, as far as like damage per resupply and stuff like that, but it is nice to deal with Hive Lords, and it is very nice to deal with dragons. You can get them while they're like swooping really far away from you. 2 shots in general kills them, or 1 shot to the head. Trying to go for the headshot, wait for it to be like flapping in front of you to then go for it, and then you can one-shot it a decent amount. Inside the caves, it's great for dealing with mega nests. nests, which is great. If you guys didn't know, the Bile Titan nest can be locked on by the spear and it can destroy Bile Titan nest. So if you're looking for something for those dragon hive world missions and you don't want to bring ultimatum, spear is there for you. Highly recommend. It's a little awkward to use in the rest of the cave missions because obviously the caves themselves might hit the wall or like the enemy's gonna be too close to you in those awkward situations, but I don't think it's a bad choice whatsoever. Recoilless is one that I'm like debating putting in S tier. I find it to be very effective for dealing with hive lords because you can be pristinely accurate at dealing with one armor plate on the hive lord, whereas with the spear obviously it's tracking to one central point and then it's aiming at that. Also, I really like the recoilless for going into the caves if I feel confident enough not to need a backpack. Some people are going to feel like they need a backpack and some people are not, and they're going to want the open spot for maybe a mech or an extra stratagem or hellbound backpack or something like that. So this one's like kind of straddling between the two. We'll see where I end up putting it in the end, but I think for now I'm going to put it in like A+. I do think it's a really strong option, and obviously it one-shots dragons in the head, two-shots them in the body. Epoch is definitely another big winner of this patch. I love bringing it for mobbing in caves in general. Feels good amount of ammo. Obviously it's got the magazines so you can fire off multiple shots. It does bring the ruptured enemies out of their state, which is cool. I appreciate that quite a bit. But that being said, it does have like the risk versus reward of you could potentially blow yourself up with it, wasting a revive and losing your epoch. So this is definitely a weapon that I would be careful. If you're not very experienced with it, maybe don't bring it. Definitely get some more practice first. But it does a very good job versus dragons. It seems like it's 3 to 4 shots on average, as long as you're doing the big charge shots. And I think that's mostly because of like the big explosion is multi-hitting, which is nice. But yeah, I really like using it versus dragons. It felt very nice. You can't quite get 3 shots off when it's hovering. At least I wasn't fast enough a couple times, but maybe if you can get him to delay a little bit longer, you could get 3 off and kill him in one swoop. If you have been like avoiding the weapon, I would maybe try it and like get better with it because it does, I think, pay off. The Wasp is a fun one. I think it performs pretty damn well versus dragons. Doesn't really do anything versus hive lords. It tickles them. It'll do something, but it tickles them. And it's like hard to use in the caves a lot of the time. Like I do think it's like decent, but it's not something that I'm like calling home about. It's okay. I would probably like, if I'm going to be using this or thinking of using this, I'm probably just going to bring the spear instead, unless I really wanted the ability to kill spewers. Because that's one thing that the Wasp does very well, is it one-shot spewers very reliably. So if you're out in the dunes, it's very nice for that. In some cave environments, you might have enough of a runway to be able to like pretty reliably do that. It can kill bug holes, but you know, you need the right lineup for it. So it's got some things going for it. Autocannon, right up there in S tier in my opinion. It's extremely good for dragons. You can either use flak or AP armor piercing rounds. If you're good at going for the headshot, armor piercing rounds. If you want to just go for the wings, use flak. Really nice for just running around the caves and having something that can deal with basically everything you run into. Even Bile Titans, it just takes like 10 to 12 shots. Spewers get deleted by them. Impalers get deleted by them. It can take ruptured enemies out of the ground because you have a lot of it. You have a ton of ammo in that backpack. Once again, if you're someone who maybe like has trouble without a guard dog backpack to like watch your back, it might be like lower for you, but I personally find the utility of it extremely high. Really good for dealing with a lot of the objectives that I run into. And it also gives me an extra stratagem slot to like potentially bring like something else. Like if I'm doing the hive lung, I'll have an extra stratagem slot to use the hellbound backpacks. And like I will use this against the hive lord, because once you break open that chest piece, this thing does fantastic damage. But like maybe I'll bring like anti-tank emplacement to deal with breaking of the armor, or I'll be just spamming strafing runs over and over again to hopefully break the armor, stuff like that. Grenade launcher, I really like using this thing, especially with supply backpack. I'm probably gonna put it lower on A+ just because the ammo economy is not particularly great if you don't bring the supply backpack, but like the rupture enemies get absolutely melted by this thing. It's pretty good versus dragons. Just spam fire the wing, but you'll definitely want to bring like a supply backpack with it. So it's a little bit like lower on the tier list because of that. It's not like a spear gun where like you don't feel like you need the supply backpack nearly as much. The escalator recently got changed in this latest patch. It is no longer 4-tapping Bile Titans in the head. It is closer to about 10-12 in my testing. Also, charger butts are not being destroyed nearly as fast. I think the weapon is still pretty good. I still think it's like a good ad clear. It's good at taking the enemies out of the burrowed state for the ruptures. I still think it's like pretty good for taking out Bile Titans and pretty good for taking out chargers. It's just not as good as it once was, you know, where it was sitting in like A+ before. Now it's closer to B+, maybe B tier in general. Like it's probably like close, you know, middle B. Airburst is a surprising one. It's actually pretty good against dragons, on average 2 rockets, but unfortunately that's kind of where it ends. It's a killing machine in the caves. Who's surprised? used. I would definitely put it in cluster rounds, at least to reduce the killing a little bit more. You can use it for taking out like the occasional like charger or bile titan, and it's okay versus occasional bug breach, but you know, you're not really going to be using it versus hive lords unless it's an open stomach, and even then I think a lot of the shots will kind of miss and like land too far away from the stomach to damage. But I think it's potentially decent versus an opened up hive lord, but the problem is getting to that point. Laser cannon, it's okay. I find it just overheats too fast on average. That's my like biggest problem, is it overheats too often, and there's just too many like enemies you want to shoot at with it, and on top of that, it just does its damage quite slowly over time. Also, now that they've changed status effects, I find it doesn't light enemies as reliably on fire, so it also got a little bit of a hurt there. At least has pen 4, so I'm going to put it above a lot of the other support weapons, so it's not like a terrible weapon to bring, but I do think that damage per second wise, it does hurt. There is something to be said about like everybody on the team firing and using this in conjunction with one another. I do occasionally see people talking about that, and I've done it myself. It's fun, and like I've seen people talk about like, oh, well, you can use it versus the hive lord and just like all team fire, and it's got unlimited ammo, and you just like every time it comes up you use entire battery and then swap weapons, and I'm like, sure, but I still feel as if I'd rather just use AT weapons. They'll just be more effective overall. Ballistic shield is actually like decent, maybe even a little bit higher. Honestly, I'm gonna put it like A-. As a backpack stratagem, it's not bad. It can actually kind of bully rupture enemies, especially if you're the host. Rupture enemies are like heat-seeking missiles when they jump out at you when you're the host. When you're not the host, you can dodge them pretty easily, like by going side to side or just running away. But what you can do with the shield is just stand there and they'll hit it and they won't do damage to you, which is pretty cool. And also, when you're running away, the shield's on your back, so it's protecting your back versus them. I've also heard reports that apparently you can sit there and like do like old fantasy novels and stuff like that, where you're like holding the shield up to the fire of the dragon. Apparently that works. You might still get lit on fire due to the ground fire, but apparently you could just sit there and like prevent some of the damage, which is pretty cool. I don't think it's like a bad option in that regard. I do think the shield backpack is better just because there's no durability loss. One thing that I will always never like about the ballistic shield is that it can get destroyed, and it gets destroyed pretty quickly, especially if it takes some big hits. Whereas the shield, yeah, it'll break, but it recharges. So the unlimited and not needing to like do anything, like it's just always working for you. The ballistic shield, you have to essentially equip it with a one-handed weapon, most likely using crossbow in this situation, you're secondary. But like with the energy shield, it's just always working for you. Support weapon in hand or primary or secondary, it doesn't matter. It's always working for you. So the shield backpack is definitely a better option in my opinion. Directional shield is like, okay, I mean, I guess you could use it versus like spewers, but like just use one of the other two shields I just mentioned. It's not meant for this front basically. Supply backpack, unsurprisingly, goes all the way up into S tier. Extremely good for keeping you alive and your team resupplied in the caves. Incredibly good for pairing with so many other support weapons on this tier list that might be lower. It elevates those support weapons up higher. A good example would be the grenade launcher. Grenade launcher plus supply backpack feels really nice. Warp pack, the more I use it, the more I think it's an S tier in general for just mobility in the caves. It's definitely the best mobility option for the caves. It's fantastic for dodging both the dragon attacks and dodging the hive lord attacks. Highly recommend. It's a great backpack. There is some skill to using it, so maybe not everybody will see eye to eye with me on the warp pack. You have to be creative with it to be like super effective, but it's super strong. I highly recommend. Okay, so the jetpack. I think the jetpack is like a little hard to use in the caves because you can ragdoll if you run into something still in this game. So it's like kind of hard to use in the caves, but if you're out of the caves, I think it does a lot better in the dunes, getting some like decent high ground on the dunes and then like flying forward 100 meters. It's super satisfying. It's awesome. But because a lot of these missions revolve around caves and it just doesn't feel very good in caves, I'm going to probably put it in B+. You know, it's like only good on half the mission and dodging in half the mission, whereas warp pack feels more useful in more situations in my opinion. Also, the lower cooldown of warp pack ends up making it feel better. Hover backpack, I'm going to put right next to it. The high ground can sometimes be pretty useful in the caves because you can kind of stand on those like pillars and stuff like that, especially on flag missions, and you can avoid damage by like going up into the ceiling. It's just sometimes the caves have low ceilings and it doesn't really help that much, and if you don't kill all those enemies below you, you're just gonna fall right back down to them, so keep that in mind. The arc dog is a solo diver's best friend because it's a limited ammo, medium pen, great ad clear potential. But please, for the sake of all Helldivers, don't take this and play next to your teammate. You will kill your teammates and they will get very angry with you. It's a great stratagem if you play like more solo oriented and you're the person that kind of goes off by themselves, or you just play solo in general. But I don't think think it's as good as like a gas guard dog, for instance, which is like up in S tier. I'm gonna be honest, it's probably like B+. It's probably a little bit better than that if you play by yourself, but I would rather people just not get this impression that it's really good and then forget that like there's a team play component to this game and you're just gonna kill your teammates constantly with this thing. It's so hard to micromanage it if you play next to your teammates to make sure that it's not gonna kill them. It's really difficult because not only do you have to micromanage your dog, but you also have to micromanage like where you're positioned versus your teammates, and your teammates are unpredictable. They might just run in front of you and get smacked, and that happens so much less with other guard dogs. Another really great guard dog is the ballistic guard dog. Highly recommend it. It's really good versus rupture strain, and in general just being great at like protecting your back. Gas guard dog just has so much more CC and affects like chargers and stuff like that, so that's all why it's better. But I do think the ballistic guard dog is a great alternative if you don't quite have the gas guard dog yet. The laser guard dog is not as powerful in my opinion, mostly down to the fact that it has light pen and the rupture strain is medium pen for the most part, so it comes down a little bit. It's still a great option for dealing with like spewers and lighting them on fire and like hunters and brood commanders and stuff like that, and it's a limited ammo, never stops firing, so there's positives to it. But I think the ammo economy concern is worth it if you get that medium pen, and it does do really good against ads in general. Hellbound Backpack is S tier for these missions, mostly down to the fact that it's great versus Hive Lords if you can place it correctly. It's okay, I guess, versus dragons if you time it correctly, but you're probably not going to use it. But it's fantastic against the cave missions in general. It's really nice having someone on your team, even if you're not doing the Hive Lung, because right now the free Hellbound Backpack very consistently just lands on the roof above the lung, which is like, it's a stupid bug. So I will typically just bring my Hellbound Backpack, but let's say you're not doing the Hive Lung mission, it's still fantastic for like, you ever been into like the eggs inside the caves and it's like these very narrow hallways and stuff like that, and there's tons of enemies. I've had Bile Titans in those like really small chambers. It's terrifying. It's really nice to just be able to run in there, Hellbound Backpack, drop it, run out, and just kill all the eggs. Or just like do like a flag mission and just throw it on the bug breach and just walk away. The Hellbound Backpack is performing very well in the caves, and I think it's mostly because our red stratagems are just way less useful. The Hellbound Backpack has the opportunity to shine. The silo is cool. I think it's okay versus a Hive Lord. It's like okay versus bug breaches. Remember, it is bugged and it's like multi-counting kills, so you're not actually getting that many kills. It's kind of like the Hellbound Backpack. There's probably only 20 or 30 enemies there, but it says 80, but you didn't actually get 80. Just heads up. But the silo is nice for like the dragons. Your mileage may vary though. You can like track the silo to a dragon if you like hold down left click, whatever your fire button is, and you can like laser the dragon. But I found a lot of times it was just circling around the dragon, and then you like get it to go away and then come back, and then maybe you can get it to one shot, and it does one shot a dragon pretty reliably. But I found the best case was if you wait for the dragon to be flapping in front of you and then you laser guide it to you, it should get there in time as long as your silo's not across the map. I wouldn't really recommend it versus Hive Lords, but you can use it versus Hive Lords. Would probably like get it to aim at an armor plate or like at the head, and it should do some decent damage to it. Nothing crazy, but decent damage. Probably gonna put it like A- because you're not gonna be using it in the caves pretty much at all. It's really tough to like place it in the cave, protect it in the cave, then call it in to use it in the cave, because you need a big wide open area, because it can get clipped a lot of times, either firing up or coming down, because it doesn't always do a perfect like top down attack. Sometimes it's at an angle, so just keep that in mind. So yeah, I think it's good, but I do think it's like not the best stratagem. FRV surprisingly is pretty good in the caves, but it takes a well organized team to make it really effective. But you can absolutely blitz missions by just driving into the objective, like the Hive Lung, dropping up your Hellbound Backpack, and then just driving out. Now, it takes a good driver to do that. Not everybody's going to be able to do that, but I can give it credit where credit is due. It is pretty good at that. It's also pretty decent for like just running away from like the Hive Lord or just running away from the dragons for the most part. And the heavy machine gun on the back is pretty nice for laying fire into a dragon at the same time. It's decent. Patriot Exosuit, I think, is like an A tier. I'm putting it at the bottom of A+. I think it's great, but it does not beat the absolute demon that is Emancipator Exosuit. It is disgustingly good at killing dragons, killing objectives, just destroying and making bug missions in general in the caves so much easier. You just have this ultimate killing machine that can like take out nests, can take out Bile Titans, can take out chargers, can take out impalers, can take out spewers, can get rupture enemies out of the ground. It just does awesome. It's so good. I highly recommend it. If everybody on your team brings it, your mission is like 2 times easier, and it's actually pretty damn good versus Hive Lords. Just obviously shoot at the spot that you want to make the weak point. And then once it's destroyed, you have a fantastic DPS machine just full auto spamming into that weak point. It will melt them. Just be careful not to get squished by it or like the spew, but like it's really strong at dealing with a lot of stuff on the bug missions. Trust me, it will make your mission way easier. Now for the turrets. One thing I'm going to say quickly is that you're going to see my turret placements to be a lot lower, and it's mostly down to the fact that turrets get really messed up by Rupture Strain. Because the turrets don't target the enemies below, they can get forced up by maybe like a rocket hitting an enemy that's above and the explosion radius is large enough to affect it. But for the most part, it doesn't actually aim at anything that's below ground. You are going to have to protect the turret. If you protect the turret, I think turrets get a lot more useful, but you can't really do the same like throw and forget as you do on normal bug missions. It just doesn't work here. I do think turrets in general are quite nice for like the opened areas on the caves. It's kind of like a checkpoint or like an area of a reprieve. You can kind of like take a moment to collect, get some supplies. You have a turret watching your back. Just be careful. Scouting turrets love to spin around and just one-shot teammates. Okay, that being said, I think like the 2 machine gun sentries are like A-. I think they're fairly good at doing their job at like just killing enemies inside the caves if you're willing to protect them. If you don't, they're going to be a hell of a lot lower. I think the laser sentry is okay. It just overheats too fast on bug missions in general. So it is nice to have like greater pen, but it just overheats way too fast. It needs to have like 30% more fire time, at least in my opinion. Flame sentry is another one of those, like it's pretty good if it spreads enough fire, but Rupture Strain just kind of bullies it too much. It'll get destroyed very easily. You got to protect it. If you can protect it, I do think it's like up there with the other two, but the extra pen of fire is not that useful, and spreading fire, it doesn't always do because it aims almost a little too high, which is a bit unfortunate. Both autocannon sentry and rocket sentry are going to go a little higher here, and the main reason for that is because it's actually quite good against dragon. Just make sure to throw it off to the side so it actually targets the dragon, doesn't get hit by the fire. It's actually quite good against hive lords. If you can see like the ground like erupting with like, you know, the sand and stuff like that, throw your stratagem turrets to the left, to the right, and then you get prepared to do your DPS rotation versus the hive lord. These turrets will help you just do greater sustained DPS over the course. And then on top of that, when the hive lord leaves, they're doing a pretty good job of just killing ads around you, so you have more time to focus on the hive lord. Also, obviously they do quite well in the caves versus like the beefier, like tankier enemies like chargers and ball titans and impalers and stuff like that. Please do not bring mortars to your cave missions in general. They're not going to do very well. They're mostly just going to kill your teammates. I'm going to put in Z tier because it's technically not useless, and you could absolutely micromanage the ever-living shit out of this thing, but it's not that good. Even with you micromanaging it, the killing potential of the mortar is fairly low compared to a lot of the other turrets that exist in the game at this point. It can get rupture at enemies to come out of the ground, especially if you ping them, but let's just be honest, you're probably going to use something else to get them out of the ground. There's just so many better options. I just don't really love the mortars that much. I get killed way too often by them. If you're fantastic at protecting your sentry and pinging all the enemies you want it to land, and you never miss a ping and it always hits where you want it to, fair enough, it's probably going to be closer to B+, but I feel like most people are not going to be able to do that micromanaging. EMS sentry is going to be like B+. It does get obviously messed up by Rupture Strain, but it can stun Rupture Strain out of the ground, which is really cool. Mortars in general have a hard time existing in caves, as you can probably imagine, just because of the cave roof limiting you, but out on the dunes and stuff like that, I think it's like pretty good for like locking down a bug breach if you can get it to aim there. It is nice. I don't see many people bring it, but for pretty good reason. It's kind of more niche, and a dead enemy tends to be the best form of CC rather than just a stunned enemy. Mines, I want to put them higher for like cave missions, but they're too often just being used in like poor situations in caves, and then you're running through, and because like the ground in caves, you're like very focused areas, your teammates just end up walking through your mines and like they end up dying. And then out and about, technically they're pretty good, but like once again, because of the heavy sand, like there's tons of sand, the mines can very easily get lost in the deep sand, and then your teammates just die. Like we're already constrained on revive a lot of times on these missions because a lot of people are just dying, that bringing anything like this that can like hurt your team, I think deserves to be D tier. I'm moving them down to D tier. I think I'm being way too kind to it. You're probably a much bigger detriment to your team than actual positive when you bring these, because not only are you losing the opportunity cost because you could just bring a better stratagem that would help your team, but you're bringing something that could actually harm the team big time. Anti-tank mines are actually fairly decent though, because Helldivers on average do not activate them. They can, and they can hurt your your mechs, but I think they can be placed more effectively than the other mine. I'll be more kind to them here. Just please, 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 please tell your mech users where your anti-tank mines are when you use them. Do not just throw them out and just assume they know where they are. Also, when you're doing a gator mission, maybe don't bring them for a gator mission. Your gator can run over those mines and get absolutely nuked by them. Just be careful. But one interesting strategy that you could do with AT mines is throw them out and get a Hive Lord to either erupt out of the ground on top of them or do a body slam on top of them. Anti-tank mines do a lot of damage per individual explosion. They're actually pretty sick. And there's a lot of anti-tank mines. If you could get a lot of the mines to blow up on a Hive Lord, I think it would be very chunky. I don't think it's like the most sound strategy, and it would probably be very niche and like hard to pull off, but its potential is very high. Gas mines, I think, are actually extremely powerful on cave missions in general. Gas mines are not very deadly to you personally or your team. They're not very deadly to your mechs, but they're extremely good against the enemies, and you can just throw this on a bug breach, and it's essentially like a gas barrage as long as it actually gets to throw out all of its mines. So if you see a bug breach forming, throw it next to it, and hopefully a lot of that bug breach will just be taken care of. So honestly, good option for even just dealing with Hive Lords, because you're the guy who throws that on every bug breach that spawns. Pretty good. Tesla towers, I don't really recommend them too much. I do think they have a potential for like cave missions on like flag, but if this is sitting in front of you in a cave, you can't go down that route. You have to kill it. And then on top of that, a lot of times because of the tight CQC environment, you can very easily come around a corner and just get zapped by it. It's very hard, and not everybody's going to have the reaction time to immediately dive. And also, if you guys didn't know, guard dogs piss off the Tesla tower, so even if you're prone, the guard dog can still get attacked. So keep that in mind. It might actually get you killed. The energy shield, not bad for the spitting attack versus Hive Lords, and not bad for the fire attack on dragons. So if you feel like you're just always getting oppressed by those two attacks, the shield generator is okay. Technically, I would probably maybe recommend using it versus that very niche scenario. If you're like really struggling against that, it's decent. I think the grenade emplacement is a cool stratagem, and I really like it in some scenarios, especially for like flag missions, because you can just lock down like a hallway very easily if you like obviously have roof access, or if you like position yourself really well on like a dune and you have like a bug breach in front of you, you have so many grenade launcher shots that you can single-handedly deal with a bug breach outside of like maybe a ton of chargers or like Ball Titan. Like you'll be able to kill all the spewers, all the hunters, and you just spawn camp them. It's really good for that, but it's very situational. It's hard to make work outside of some situations, but I would give it a try. I do think it's slept on. I do think people kind of like don't really realize how powerful this thing can be if you give it the opportunity. HMG emplacement is like middle A minus. Like it's like not a bad stratagem. I don't really recommend using it versus like dragons all too much because you are a sitting duck. But let's say luckily you're not getting focused by that dragon, you can do some really good damage versus them, and you can use it to some effect in like defense missions, but you can't deal with the rupture enemies, so you have to constantly get off of it to make sure that the rupture enemies aren't getting too close. So you're gonna have to pair it with something that like gets them out of it, or like focus on a teammate that's helping you. So it's a bit hard to use at times, but I don't think it's like a bad choice. I think it's like fairly good. The last strategy to place is the anti-dangle placement. This one's a bit hard for me to place just because I think it's like absolutely S tier for taking care of Hive Lords and just like very consistent good damage versus Hive Lord, but it doesn't perform very well versus dragons because of like the fact that you're a sitting duck. It doesn't perform very good in the cave missions just because, yeah, you can get ruptured enemies out of the ground, but often you're like so immobile that like one rupture enemy behind you could like just end your career. So like it's hard for me to place. I think it's probably like A plus, just because if you know you're about to get Hive Lords, you take it. You know, if you're checking the website and you know like, hey, I'm about to get Hive Lords, I think it's like really good solid option to bring as like maybe even your only thing that's good at Hive Lord killing, because it's just like occasionally, oh, a Hive Lord's on my teammate, let me put down an AAT emplacement and just like shoot 30 rounds at it. It's very good for those reasons alone, even though like I'm not really going to recommend it versus like the other elements in it. I think it's pretty good for that. Looking at things, how would I place things? I think I'm going to put auto cannon a little bit lower just because I think it's harder to use for a lot of players. I think I'm going to keep spear gun like up there in A plus. I'm going to keep recoils really high as well. I think epoch is like honestly kind of a sleeper pick. I think people need to give it a try. Spears up there. Grenade launcher still up there. Yep, I agree. EATs are good. Silo probably deserves to be a little bit lower. Maybe next to 500 kg. I think they're kind of similar to one another. Railgun, AMR a little bit lower. HMG a little bit higher. Railgun a little higher, I think. I think that's fine. I'll probably put like laser cannon a little bit higher. I think that's fine. I think I'm being a bit rough on maybe like the 110s. I think they're a little bit better, and Gatling Brush are a little bit better now that we're like a little bit farther in. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty happy with that. Oh yeah, that's right. Orbital precision is a little bit higher. Like it's definitely on the higher point of that. I think I am happy. All right, so that is my tier list for the Hive worlds. Just do bear in mind, depending on the variant that you get, Rupture and Dragons and Hive Lords existing, things will orientate differently. But hopefully you guys have listened to why something is good in this tier list and you guys have enjoyed. Please consider leaving a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below, what is your S tier? You know, this is just my opinion and what I found works for me and my team and people around me. What are you guys using? What's really working for you guys? I'd be interested to see how it differs. And yeah, if you haven't already, do leave a subscribe on the channel for more content. If enough people are interested, we will do a primary, secondary, and grenades tier list after this, and we can get that out within the next couple days. So hope you guys enjoyed. Come on by the streams, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out. Much love. Bye.